Hello everyone, I'm Anurag, founder of NEWS-GENIX. Today's topic is about period poverty. So we will be interacting with Ella Lambert, founder and CEO of the Pachamama project. She's great inspiration for youth and igniting many women to fight against period poverty. We welcome you, Ella, at NEWS-GENIX Forum.
Hi, thank you so much for having me and for starting this conversation. I think it's a really important one to have. So yeah, thank you.
So Ella, so what triggered you to start with the Pachamama project and where the idea came from?
Yeah, so the Pachamama project is basically an organisation I set up back in August. And I've created like a network of volunteers. There's about 1,000 of us now, and we're making these reusable sanitary pads, which we then send off to refugees around the world. Honestly, I can never pinpoint one reason why I started the project. I think there were so many things. I really deeply cared about the refugee situation. When I was watching on the news, I wanted to help that specific group of people. But also I have always suffered with appalling period pain. And so when I was younger, I used to miss days of school, miss days of university. I have to cancel plans every single month because of the period pain that I experience. And so even though I've been lucky enough not to have dealt with period poverty as such, I know what it's like to have to, miss education because of having a period, or, have to cancel things which are necessary in my life. And so, yeah, that was, I have a huge kinship with people who experience that. And I wanted to sort of do my bit and play a part in combating period poverty. And yeah, this seemed like a really easy solution.
So what is period poverty and how people are reacting or responding to your initiative, the Pachamama project?
Period poverty is when people cannot access sanitary products. So normally because they can't afford them, or it might be because the people that I work with are people on the move. And so they may have access to, 20 organizations handing out sanitary products one month, and yet then they may move on to the next camp or the next country, and then they might not have that. So that's what period poverty is. And in terms of the response that we've had, it has been unbelievable. I put out a message on Facebook when I first started the project, asking if anyone could donate any materials so that we could, begin making them. And I had someone come to the door of my house every single day for a month, dropping off bags and bags of fabric. And we've had to turn our living room into a factory. And it's just full of sacks of material, and now sacks of patch pads, because we get 1,000 every week from our amazing volunteers all over the country, and all over the world actually.
So there is one question from one of my colleagues. Okay. So as period poverty is a global crisis, how are you going to fulfill the needs of refugees, as many of them do not have access towards household accessories, for example, soaps or detergents or washing machine? So sometimes, as we know, period stains are highly absorbed by cloth. So how challenging it is for refugees in the camps, and what methods they can afford?
Yeah, it can be really challenging. And we just have to understand that the issue of period poverty does not have a one-fix-all solution. It's so easy to be like, oh, we've got this amazing product and it's going to fix period poverty entirely. And unfortunately, that's not the case. There is a product called the menstrual cup, and it lasts a lifetime. It's you just wash it and reuse and wash it and reuse, and it's a fantastic idea. But there are lots of people in the world who cannot use them because of their cultural identity and the issue of virginity. And for example, with these pads, they're great for people who have access to washing facilities, but then there will be people who don't, where it doesn't work for, in which case you have to look at disposable pads. And so I think we just all have to know that as organisations dealing with period poverty, that it's not a one-fix-all solution. But yeah, we have found ways of working around it in some way. So for example, in Lebanon, we work with women in refugee settlements, and most of them actually have access to washing facilities, or at least running water where they can wash and use them. But there was an issue of drying them, for example, because of the stigma related to it. Hanging them up to dry was causing like unwanted, unnecessary attention from men. And so the organisation that we work with managed to source a dryer for them to use communally, which is amazing. And we've added something in our instructions which says to pin them in a pair of underwear before hanging them up to dry, so that people don't necessarily notice what they are or don't start asking questions about what they are. So yeah, we will just keep like moving with the feedback that we get, and try and make it a solution for as many people as we can and get them to as many people who can use them.
That's really great, actually, initiative taken by Ella.
Yeah, we've made so far, I think 25,000 pads overall collectively. We've sent 10,000 out. So that's, I think, 3,000 people that have benefited from the pads so far, which is really, really amazing. But I feel like there's always, because there's so many people in the world that deal with period poverty, like there's over 500 million. And so I feel like even when we reach these big numbers that are really like exciting milestones, it still feels like just a drop in the ocean, like there's so much more to do and so many more people that we want to help. And also, I mean, the issue of period poverty really is never ending, because there will always be, especially with what's happening with climate change at the moment, there is going to be a huge amount of forced migration. And we have seen with the pandemic how easily people's circumstances change. You might go from being absolutely fine one month to suddenly you're homeless the next month. And so there are always going to be people that will need support from organisations in providing sanitary products.
That's really true. And how period poverty impacts education, health, and emotional well-being?
I think that stigma is a huge thing. I mean, there are so many young girls all over the world and people in general who menstruate, who maybe don't feel like they can step forward and ask for the help that they need. And I think it's so important that we have like education from a younger age and with mixed groups as well, because I think so often men and boys are excluded from the conversation. And then you have the situation where the boys like hear the word tampon, hear the word period, and they start laughing and jeering at the girls. I remember at school being absolutely humiliated at the idea of walking to the bathroom and someone seeing like the tampon in my hand or something like that. And actually, when I've had conversations with school kids, in mixed groups, I've actually seen nothing but like maturity, because they've actually been given the opportunity to ask questions and to feel like they're part of the conversation. And it's not the girls being taken into a dark corner of the room and being told how to use a sanitary pad. It's like a general conversation about this is something that women go through. And it also would create a less exclusive conversation as well, because then you have people who may be non-binary or who are transitioning and who may ordinarily be excluded from the conversation because they're not in that classroom. So yeah, I think like education has such a huge part to play in the issue of period poverty in general, just in allowing people to feel like they can ask those questions and ask for the help that they need.
So how reusable pads are more effective as compared to other sanitary products?
Well, I think the thing is with reusable pads is that they're extremely environmentally friendly, because obviously you reuse. And for someone who doesn't necessarily know month to month whether they're going to be able to afford products, and this is the case for a lot of people where they really do have to choose between putting food on the table or buying sanitary pads that month. And so they know that once they get a pack of sanitary pads from us, reusable pads, that they are going to be absolutely fine for the next 3 to 5 years, and they're not going to have to worry about it again. Now, obviously, as I've already said, that doesn't mean that it's the only solution. You also have menstrual cups, which are really great. And there are people who just don't have access to washing facilities who it won't work for. So it's not like one is necessarily better than other. It's more that this is a really good solution for the people that it works for the people who have access to washing facilities, because it is a long-term solution, not like, oh, okay, I'm okay for this month, but not sure about the next one.
how COVID crisis is impacting period poverty, and what are the challenges your organization is facing in terms of distribution of sanitary products to the refugee camps?
So yeah, I think especially initially the pandemic had a huge impact on period poverty. In the UK, for example, right in the midst of the pandemic, the government came up with a new scheme where they were giving free products to all state schools and colleges. And so all the schools had the ability to get free products for their students, but the students weren't in school, so they weren't able to access them. You know, ordinarily when kids may have been able to go to their school nurse and say, oh, you know, can I have a pack of pads? I can't get them myself. They weren't able to do that. And I think it's the same with like refugee camps, like especially in the beginning, a lot of NGOs were completely restricted on what they could do. Their staff numbers went down a huge amount because a lot of organizations rely on international volunteers and travel has been completely restricted. And also, you know, it was just more difficult to get the distributions in because everything was impacted because it was such a shock, the pandemic, that, you know, even like shipping was impacted in the beginning. But I think it has settled down now. At least I was working in Greece for the last 4 to 5 months, and there were, you know, enough sanitary products for everyone who was in the camps. All the organisations were sorting it out, and there wasn't a problem anymore. But obviously, it's going to completely depend where in the world you are and how the pandemic has impacted your country because it's different everywhere.
So let's just the final question. How can we come up with some solutions or spread awareness to end period poverty?
Yeah, I think there's a lot to do. I think from a very like basic level, just have a conversation around the dinner table with your friends and family, with your, you know, colleagues, with anyone, male, female, whoever, so that we can reduce the stigma, so that women feel like they can come forward more and talk about this issue and not feel embarrassed or shamed about it, because it is the biggest issue when it comes to period poverty. I think so many people, when they walk past like a homeless person on the street, will buy them a bottle of water and a sandwich, but will not even think about the fact that they may need sanitary products, like just buy them a pack of pads as well. If you can, there's so many organisations that you can donate to. You can donate to the Pachamama project, of course. There's also Bloody Good Period. There's lots of NGOs dealing with period poverty. And in terms of like our project, depending on where you are in the world, if you're in America, Italy, France, Spain, England, UK in general, or if you want to set up, you know, help bring the project to your country, then all you need is a sewing machine. So, and a bit of free time. So there are lots of things that you can do, but I think the one thing that everyone can do, no matter your circumstances, is have those conversations.
That's really great, Ella. Thank you so much, Ella, for sharing great insights about period poverty and about the Pachamama project. Thank you so much for your valuable time.
Oh, thank you so much for having me and for having this conversation, helping us reach more people. I think so many people don't even know what period poverty is. I speak to so many people about what I do, and they're like, oh, but what is that? I've never heard about that before. People who work in the NGO sector. And so just getting the word out is like a major thing. So yeah, thank you so much for that.
My pleasure. Yeah.
Wonderful.